Hi, my name is Kenya Holmes Preston, and today we are going to be discussing how social media use can impact anxiety or self esteem in adults, as you can see in the title. So let's get into it. Now, in today's time, it's not uncommon for people to use social media or have a social media account. With that being said, there have been studies that show that the use of social media has been a cause of numerous psychological problems, especially for the new generation or in the age groups of 18 to 29. There was a period of identity construction and emotional instability, and therefore led people to be more susceptible to external legitimization and social comparison. The issue with that is social media has been finding itself to be the cause of increased anxiety and low self esteem throughout time. This proposed study is expected to uh, address this gap by investigating the assumption that relationships between social media use a predictor of alterations in levels of anxiety and self-esteem over time, which can be examined through longitudinal framework. In the past, the theory is that the mediator of psychological outcome in relation to online behavior is self-esteem. With that being said, the signs of anxiety appear to be rising with the further problematic usage patterns. This this time in relation to all of that is also crucial in explaining how to establish the evidence-based prevention interventions and mental health interventions that would be applicable to emerging the adults in the digital environment. This proposed research is meant to address three research questions. To begin with, does problematic use of social media imply an increase in the level of anxiety over time among emerging adults? Second, is there a time based variation in self esteem in terms of severity of social media use? And the third question would be, does self esteem mediate the association between problematic social use and anxiety at different times? Well, at different instances in time. The hypothesis is that according to the available literature, is that the situation will be, in the long run, high scores run in problematic social media use. This would be meaningful predictors of anxiety symptoms. Furthermore, that means the decline of self esteem is also bound to emerge or come about as a consequence of the excessive use of social media, and a mediator that enhances the manifestations of anxiety. It is possible, however, to test these hypotheses simultaneously, take into account the measurement error and latent psychological constructs when using structural equation modeling. Such as such approach provides such approach would provide more in-depth description of the complex psychological process of interdependence between social media behavior, self-esteem, and anxiety. Also, the proposed research design of the given study is a longitudinal study based on quantitative data with the implementation of structural equation modeling to determine the relationships between problematic social media use, self-esteem, and anxiety. The data would be collected 3 times per academic year on a sample of emerging adults who would be recruited in the university setting. Validated self-report measures, social media addiction tendencies, symptoms of anxiety, and global self-esteem would be what we would use to measure this research and assist with the validation of it. The structural equation modeling is selected due to the fact that it examines latent variables and direct and indirect effects over time. This method can be applied in particular when the mediation routes are to be evaluated, meaning if the effects of self-esteem on the correlation between social media use and the effects of self-esteem and how it correlates with using social media and the anxiety outcomes. Causation inference is also improved by the longitudinal modeling since it causes a determination of causality by observing the changes that occur over time. This would be as opposed to determining the co-relationships of a specific time. Control variables would be added to demographic variables such as age, gender, and things like that, which would enhance the accuracy and interpretability of the model. Okay, and for our last slide, this will discuss the importance and expectations of the study. So the proposed study also enriches the psychology field, with the knowledge of influence of social media behaviors on the mental health of individuals at any given moment. So there's not going to be any specific time. It's more like random sampling. The research through a structural equation modeling methodology can have the ability to describe the dynamic correlation between anxiety and self-esteem. This offers the explanation in relation to the weakness of the field of psychology among emerging adults. The outcomes can be applied in a clinical intervention to target self-esteem boost as a preventative to anxiety brought about by digital overuse, in addition to the other research. With that being said, that means that the research would be able to inform institutions of higher learning and psychologists on how to develop more targeted programs or more targeted psychoeducational programs, which would assist with regulating unhealthy social media practices as well. So the longitudinal design increases the evidence foundation that is needed in the policy suggestions and the preventative actions in mental health. So going back to the earlier research, self-esteem is the primary psychological process in the digital addiction models. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Again, my name is Kenya Holmes Preston, and that is the end.